Welcome to the Veil of Truth, your gateway to uncovering hidden insights and illuminating mysteries. I'm thrilled you've joined our global community. Whether you're watching from a bustling city skyline or a quiet countryside, we're glad you're here. Globe showing Europe, Africa, so tell me, where are you tuning in from today? Chapter 1, An Unexpected Visitor. The morning sun poured a gentle, golden light across the cobbled streets of London, glinting off the damp pavements with the freshness of a newly washed world. From the small window of his modest flat, Hercule Poirot observed the city waking, his little grey eyes following a parade of passers-by with meticulous attention. Each movement, each gesture, spoke volumes, and Poirot's sharp mind catalogued every subtle indication of mood, intention, and circumstance. He was, as always, enjoying his morning ritual, a delicate cup of café au lait, served with a small silver spoon, a crust of bread delicately buttered, and the morning paper unfolded with utmost care. Poirot had just begun reading an article on the latest developments in international affairs when a knock at the door interrupted the peaceful cadence of his morning. "Entrez," he said, in that perfectly measured tone that carried authority without harshness. The postman, a young man with a flushed face and an apologetic expression, handed over an envelope of cream-colored paper, sealed with a wax insignia that bore an intricate crest. Poirot's moustache twitched with a faint, excited movement as he examined the seal. He carefully broke the wax and unfolded the letter. The handwriting was elegant and precise, yet it betrayed a certain urgency in its faintly trembling lines. "Monsieur Poirot," the letter began, "an item of considerable importance has disappeared from Ashford Manor, my family home in the countryside. This object is both of immense sentimental value and financial worth. Your unparalleled skill in matters of detection is my only hope. I implore you to intervene at the earliest possible moment." The letter concluded with the signature of Lady Eleanor Ashford, a widow of refined age, whose family had long been among the respected names in English society. Poirot set down his cup and wiped the small traces of foam from his moustache. His mind, ever alert, began to catalogue the situation with the same precision he applied to the most complicated of puzzles. "Ah, Hastings," he murmured to himself, imagining his faithful companion standing nearby, a mystery in an English country house. So classic, yet always so full of human subtlety. And a theft, n'est-ce pas? There is always more to the story than the eye perceives. Mais oui, this promises to be most stimulating. Without delay, Poirot arranged for a train ticket to Ashford, a village 2 hours north of London. He packed his small leather case with his customary precision, his magnifying glass, a notebook with a fine leather cover, and a small bottle of eau de cologne to refresh himself upon arrival. Each item was placed in its designated spot, not a second too soon, not a second too late. The train journey was smooth, yet Poirot's mind never rested. He reviewed the letter in detail. The request was clear, an object had vanished from a locked cabinet, and no signs of forced entry were noted. The wording suggested not merely theft but anxiety, perhaps even fear. A careful mind, Poirot mused, might infer the character of both the thief and the victim from the subtle nuances of the request itself. Upon arrival at the quaint Ashford station, Poirot was met by the family carriage, a polished vehicle drawn by a single chestnut horse. Lady Eleanor herself was present, wrapped in a shawl of soft grey wool, her eyes betraying both dignity and a flicker of distress. Her greeting was warm but restrained, and Poirot observed the slight tremor in her hands as she led him into the carriage. "Welcome to Ashford Manor, Monsieur Poirot," she said. Her voice was melodious, yet laced with tension. "I do hope. I mean, the situation is most troubling. I am grateful for your coming." Poirot inclined his head, his moustache twitching with a delicate satisfaction. "Madam, you may be reassured. I shall examine matters with the utmost care. Every detail, no matter how insignificant it appears, will be attended to." The journey to the manor was a short one, but the landscape gave Poirot much to observe. Rows of hedges, freshly trimmed, marked the boundaries of estate after estate. Occasionally, he noted a gardener at work, a postman delivering letters, a child running across a field with a ball. Each scene, while mundane, offered a series of subtle clues about the routines and character of the people in this countryside. Poirot absorbed it all, his little grey eyes flicking with exquisite precision. Arriving at Ashford Manor, Poirot was struck immediately by the stately elegance of the place. The facade was a mix of sandstone and ivy, with tall windows framed in dark wood, reflecting the morning light. Polished steps led to a large door, flanked by statues of classical figures. He stepped inside, his gaze sweeping the hallway with deliberate calculation. The manor was quiet, too quiet. Poirot noted the absence of the usual sounds of domestic life, no clatter of dishes, no echo of voices. Yet there were subtle indicators of human presence, a faint scent of soap lingering in the hallway, a shoe left slightly askew on the polished floor, and the delicate hint of a flower in a vase that had been recently rearranged. Each element was a word in the story of the house, waiting to be interpreted. Lady Eleanor led Poirot to a drawing-room bathed in soft light, where a fire crackled quietly. "The cabinet is here," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, as though fearing that speaking too loudly might summon the thief itself. She gestured to an ornate piece of furniture against the far wall. The cabinet, crafted from dark mahogany, gleamed with the care of decades of polishing. It was locked, yet Poirot noted immediately that the lock showed no signs of tampering. "Ah," Poirot murmured, circling the cabinet like a hawk surveying prey. "The absence of forced entry, très intéressant. This suggests the hand that removed the object had means, or perhaps consent, to enter. The mind of the thief, madam, is as important as the act itself. And there is always a trace left, subtle as a whisper, which we must detect." Lady Eleanor sank into a chair nearby, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Poirot approached, noting the minute tremor of her fingers and the careful way she avoided looking directly at the cabinet. Subtle anxiety, he thought, natural, given the circumstances, but also a possible clue to the dynamics within the household. Poirot's gaze then drifted to the attendants, the butler, a tall man with precise posture, a maid, young and pale, wringing her hands, and a gardener who lingered hesitantly near the doorway. Each movement, each glance, was catalogued meticulously by the detective's little grey cells. "Monsieur Poirot," Lady Eleanor said, her voice quivering slightly, "the necklace was my mother's, and before her, it was my grandmother's. It is priceless to me, not merely for its value, but for its history. Please, you must find it." Poirot inclined his head, his moustache twitching in agreement. "Madam, I shall endeavour to do so. But first, I must observe, listen, and, most importantly, understand the human nature of this mystery. The inanimate object is merely a consequence. It is the mind, the heart, and the secret intentions of men and women that hold the key." As evening approached, Poirot settled in the manor, mentally preparing for the days of investigation ahead. The fading sunlight cast long shadows across the room, and the house seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the detective's careful scrutiny to unravel the tangled threads of deception. And so, the stage was set, Ashford Manor, a missing heirloom, a household of subtle tensions, and the incomparable Hercule Poirot, ready to employ his genius in observation, deduction, and psychological insight to uncover the truth hidden beneath layers of fear, secrecy, and human error. Chapter 2: The Scene of the Crime. The following morning, Ashford Manor greeted Poirot with a quiet grandeur, yet beneath the polished veneer, he sensed a subtle tension, like the taut string of a violin waiting for a hand to pluck it. The air was heavy with anticipation, carrying the faint scent of freshly polished wood and wax, mixed with the delicate fragrance of roses from the garden. Every element, Poirot knew, held a clue, if only one looked closely enough. Lady Eleanor appeared promptly in the drawing-room, her expression composed, though the slightest crease between her brows betrayed her worry. "Monsieur Poirot," she began, "I am grateful for your presence." The situation is delicate. I fear that the necklace may be lost forever. Poirot inclined his head gently, the tips of his fingers pressed lightly together in his characteristic gesture of concentration. Madam, we must not despair. Order and reason shall reveal what chaos hides. But first, we must examine the scene where the disappearance occurred. Lady Eleanor led him to the grand cabinet in the corner of the drawing room. The mahogany gleamed as if defying the morning light to reveal secrets. Poirot's little grey eyes roamed over every detail, the grain of the wood, the delicate inlay, the lock, and the polished handles. He moved slowly, deliberately, not touching anything yet, but observing with exquisite care. "Tell me," he asked softly, "when did you last see the necklace?" "Last night, before retiring," Lady Eleanor replied. "I admired it one final time, then placed it in the cabinet. I locked it, as always, and retired to my room. This morning, it was gone." Poirot's eyes narrowed slightly. The absence of forced entry was immediately intriguing. He circled the cabinet again, noting the slightest unevenness in the reflection of the polished surface and a faint scratch near the keyhole. A scratch so minute that any casual observer would have missed it. "Ah, interesting," he murmured, his moustache twitching. He called in the household staff, one by one, to observe their reactions. First came the butler, Mr. Blackwood, a man whose posture was impeccable and whose face rarely betrayed emotion. Poirot studied him as he spoke, noting the slight tension in his jaw and the careful avoidance of the cabinet. "Good morning, Monsieur Poirot," the butler said, bowing slightly. "I assure you, I observed nothing unusual last night." The house was quiet, as always. Poirot's gaze lingered for a moment, noting the almost imperceptible shift of weight from one foot to the other. Yes, very well," he replied softly, moving on. Next was Clara, the maid, young and delicate, her hands clasped tightly before her. Her eyes darted to the cabinet, then away, betraying a nervousness that was almost palpable. Poirot observed her carefully, cataloguing the minute signs of agitation, the rapid blink, the faint flush on her cheeks, the subtle trembling of her fingers. "Clara," he said gently, "did you see anyone near this cabinet last night?" The girl shook her head, her voice barely above a whisper. "No, monsieur. I only passed by once, to tidy the room. I did not touch anything." Poirot's moustache twitched again. "Ah, the mind speaks even when the lips deny. We shall see." Finally, he addressed the gardener, a burly man named Thomas, who had been tending the lawn since before Lady Eleanor had moved in. Thomas appeared uneasy, shuffling his feet and avoiding Poirot's direct gaze. I did not go near the house last night, sir," he stammered. "I was in the stables, feeding the horses." Poirot made a mental note, though he did not comment. Every statement, every hesitation, every fleeting glance was part of the intricate puzzle he intended to solve. Returning to the cabinet, Poirot knelt to inspect the floor beneath it. The carpet showed faint scuff marks leading to the library, nearly invisible to an untrained eye. He rose slowly, pacing the room. "Hastings, observe how even the tiniest disturbance in the environment tells a story. The thief, or perhaps the person involved, has walked this path. And yet, the absence of forced entry indicates knowledge, trust, or deceit." He lifted the cabinet door gently, careful not to disturb any dust or fingerprints. Inside, the shelves gleamed, perfectly aligned. A faint trace of perfume lingered near the lower shelf, a scent that was unfamiliar to Lady Eleanor. Poirot inhaled delicately, cataloguing the notes of jasmine and sandalwood. "Ah, very telling," he murmured. "The criminal leaves behind a signature, even if unconsciously." Lady Eleanor watched him with a mixture of fascination and anxiety. "Do you think it could have been someone I trust?" she asked, her voice tinged with fear. "Mais oui," Poirot replied softly, "Trust is often the veil behind which deception hides. But we shall discover the truth. Let us not be hasty in judgment." He examined the lock again, pressing his ear to the cabinet to listen for any irregularities in the mechanism. Nothing. No click, no whisper, no secret release. Poirot straightened, his expression thoughtful. "The lock, madam, is intact. The object was removed by someone who had means to do so without force, or perhaps it was never removed at all." Lady Eleanor's eyes widened. "Not removed?" Poirot nodded. "It is possible that what is perceived as theft is, in fact, concealment. A simple mistake, a misunderstanding, or a carefully orchestrated deception. We must consider all possibilities." He then requested access to Lady Eleanor's personal rooms and the adjoining study. As they moved through the corridors, Poirot's eyes scanned every surface, every piece of furniture, every painting on the walls. Subtle disturbances, the slight tilt of a vase, a dust mark on a table, the faint indentation of a footstep in the carpet, were all noted in the little grey cells that never ceased their silent calculations. In the study, Poirot paused. A ledger lay open on the desk, and a scrap of paper protruded from between the pages. He picked it up delicately, noting a faint series of numbers written in an almost invisible hand. "Ah, this," he whispered, "may be the first true clue in the labyrinth of this mystery. Numbers, mon ami, often conceal secrets far deeper than words." He then asked to see the rest of the household. As each member passed through the room, Poirot observed subtle micro-expressions, a slight narrowing of the eyes, a faint purse of the lips, a small tremor in the hands. Each gesture was catalogued, stored, and considered. "Humans, like this house," he murmured to Hastings, "have layers. And behind each layer is a truth waiting to be unveiled." The day progressed slowly. Poirot moved with his characteristic elegance, observing, questioning, and quietly noting the minutiae of life within Ashford Manor. By evening, he had completed his first careful inspection of the house, from the grand drawing room to the smallest servants' quarters. As the family gathered for tea, Poirot seated himself with the proper poise, his gaze drifting across each person, reading their expressions, their postures, their almost imperceptible reactions. "Tonight," he said softly, "we begin the dance of observation. Every gesture, every word, every silence may reveal the mind behind the action. And soon we shall see the path that leads to our missing necklace." And so, the stage was set for Poirot's methodical investigation. The cabinet, the perfume, the scuff marks, the ledger scrap, all small pieces of a puzzle yet to be fully revealed. Ashford Manor, so calm and dignified, concealed secrets that only the unparalleled intellect of Hercule Poirot could uncover. Chapter 3: Subtle Signs. The following morning, Ashford Manor was steeped in a quiet that felt almost unnatural. The heavy curtains allowed only a sliver of sunlight to enter, and the grand hall seemed to echo faintly with every footstep. Poirot rose early, as was his custom, and dressed with meticulous care, his moustache waxed to perfection. Breakfast was taken swiftly, though with deliberate elegance, and then, without delay, he began the day's work in earnest. "Captain Hastings," he said, his small grey eyes glinting with intensity, "today we shall observe the subtleties that reveal character. The object of interest, Madame's necklace, may yet remain hidden, but the minds of those within this house shall betray themselves, and the truth, as always, shall emerge." Hastings, still adjusting to Poirot's methodical pace, nodded wearily but dutifully, following the detective into the drawing room. The cabinet stood like a silent sentinel, gleaming in the muted light. Poirot approached it slowly, hands clasped behind his back, eyes sweeping every inch of its polished surface. "Observe, Hastings," Poirot whispered, "the absence of forced entry. No broken lock, no splintered wood. Yet the cabinet yields its secrets only to those who know where to look. And the thief, if it is indeed a thief, is someone who understands subtlety. They trust themselves, and they hope we do not. Poirot crouched slightly, inspecting the lower shelf once more. His sharp eyes caught something that had escaped notice before, a faint smudge near the corner, almost imperceptible, as though a hand had brushed lightly against the polished surface. He pressed a gloved fingertip delicately near it, then withdrew. "Hastings," he murmured, "the smallest trace can speak volumes. This is not merely dust. It is the signature of presence." He then turned to the household. Lady Eleanor had arranged a small gathering in the drawing room: the butler, Mr. Blackwood, the maid, Clara, the gardener, Thomas, and a few distant relatives who had arrived recently, ostensibly for a quiet weekend. Poirot addressed them with his usual elegance, his voice calm but commanding. "Miss Amos," he began, "we shall speak plainly, for only clarity can illuminate the shadows. Each of you was present last evening. I must ask that you recount your movements, your actions, and any observation you may have made, however trivial it may seem." The butler spoke first, his voice measured and precise. "I oversaw the household routines as usual. The doors were locked, the candles extinguished. I retired shortly after Lady Eleanor, and I assure you, nothing unusual occurred." Poirot's eyes narrowed slightly. And yet, a faint trace upon the cabinet suggests the presence of another." "Very well. We shall see." Clara, the young maid, shifted nervously, her hands twisting the hem of her apron. I was tidying the drawing room, monsieur. I passed near the cabinet once, to dust the lower shelf, but I did not touch the necklace. I swear it." Poirot's gaze softened, yet his tone remained penetrating. "Ah, young one, fear often makes us exaggerate our innocence. But the truth cannot be concealed from observation. Your hand brushed against the corner of the cabinet. A mere gesture, yes, but it leaves a trace. And traces, mon ami, are more eloquent than words." The gardener, Thomas, stepped forward, his voice gruff but hesitant. "I was in the stables feeding the horses. I did not enter the drawing room last night, sir." Poirot's little grey eyes lingered on him. "Indeed. And yet, mon ami, you were near the library. The carpet shows a scuff mark, faint but discernible, leading in that direction. Tell me, did you observe anything unusual?" Thomas hesitated, then shook his head. "Nothing, sir. I swear." Poirot's moustache twitched with satisfaction. "Very well. We shall see." He then focused on the distant relatives, whose nervous glances betrayed discomfort. Their conversation was clipped, careful, but Poirot noted the subtle avoidance of the cabinet, the slight hesitation before answering, the tiny flush on one man's cheek. Each small reaction was a note in a symphony of truth. After the formal questioning, Poirot moved with calculated attention to the study, where the ledger had first hinted at hidden activity. He retrieved the scrap of paper, examining the faint numbers written there. "Ah, a code, perhaps," he murmured. "A number is not merely arithmetic. It is a key, a signal, a subtle communication. Someone wished to conceal, but not entirely." He turned then to Lady Eleanor. "Madam, you must understand, the solution to this mystery will not lie solely in objects, but in the mind. Each of your household carries a history, a habit, a hidden thought. It is the interaction of these minds, their fears and desires, that leads to action." Poirot walked slowly around the drawing room, gesturing with a gloved hand toward the cabinet and then toward the library. "Observe, Hastings, the human mind, like this house, contains corridors, hidden rooms, and locked drawers. The path of the object, if it has indeed been moved, will reveal itself in small, almost imperceptible signs. The key is to discern what is deliberate and what is accidental." He then examined a faint scent that lingered near the lower shelf of the cabinet. "Perfume," he whispered, inhaling delicately. not one known to Madam. A subtle, exotic blend, jasmine, sandalwood, faint amber. A signature, perhaps unintended. A message left by the hand that brushed against the cabinet. Poirot's mind worked swiftly, cataloguing the scuff marks on the carpet, the smudge on the cabinet, the faint fragrance, the hesitant expressions of each household member, and the mysterious scrap of numbers. Individually, each seemed trivial, but together, they formed a web of subtle signs that could not be ignored. By late afternoon, Poirot had begun to notice patterns. The scuff marks led from the drawing room to the library, and then toward the side entrance rarely used by visitors. The perfume scent lingered only near the lower shelf, suggesting a hand of small size or a careful movement to avoid detection. And the scrap of paper hinted at knowledge of a safe or code, something not ordinarily accessible. He called Hastings aside. "Observe, mon ami. Each clue alone is almost meaningless. But the combination, the connection of these subtleties, is the essence of deduction. The thief, or perhaps, the person involved, has left behind a carefully orchestrated set of signals. Some are deliberate, others unconscious. Our task is to disentangle them." The evening drew on, and Poirot requested that all household members retire to their rooms while he remained in the drawing room, alone, pondering the day's findings. He traced his finger lightly along the scuff marks, inhaled again at the faint perfume, and studied the cabinet as if it were a living entity. Each small detail was catalogued, linked, and considered. Finally, he leaned back in the armchair, hands clasped, moustache twitching with thoughtful satisfaction. "Hastings," he said quietly, "tonight we have observed the first layer. The human mind is intricate, often more deceptive than the cleverest lock. And yet, order and reason will prevail. The necklace is not merely lost, it is waiting to be found, hidden within the interplay of fear, secrecy, and subtle error. Ah, mon Dieu, this shall be a most fascinating investigation." Outside, the wind rustled the trees of the manor's garden, as if whispering secrets, and Ashford Manor seemed to hold its breath. Within, Poirot's sharp little grey cells worked tirelessly, connecting the dots invisible to any ordinary observer. The first threads of the mystery had been identified, subtle yet telling, and the detective prepared for the next day, when closer scrutiny of the household might finally reveal the hidden hand behind the disappearance. Chapter 4 of Her Mysterious Guest. The next morning, Ashford Manor was bathed in a soft, golden light, yet the air seemed charged with a tension that had begun to weave itself through the household like a silken thread of unease. Poirot, as always, was awake before dawn, his little grey eyes observing even the slightest changes in light, shadow, and sound. The house, though grand and orderly, betrayed subtle signs of disquiet, a chair slightly out of place, a drawer ajar in the kitchen, the faint creak of floorboards betraying hurried footsteps in the night. Poirot dressed with meticulous care, selecting his attire as though each item were a carefully chosen tool for the mind's work. He descended to the drawing room, where Lady Eleanor awaited him, her face composed yet pale, her fingers nervously entwined in her lap. "Monsieur Poirot," she said quietly, "you must know, last night we had an unexpected visitor. A distant cousin, Reginald Marchmorn, arrived. I thought it prudent to invite him, though I confess I had no inkling of what might occur." Poirot inclined his head, the tips of his fingers pressed together in thought. "Ah, an unexpected guest. Always a complication, n'est-ce pas? And his arrival, madam, coincides with the disappearance." Lady Eleanor nodded. "He arrived in the late evening, after dinner. He was charming, effusive, and entirely polite, but I noticed he lingered near the cabinet, gazing at it in a manner that made me uneasy. Then he retired early, claiming fatigue." Poirot's moustache twitched in mild curiosity. "Charming, effusive, yes, these qualities can disguise many things. Observe, Hastings, how the human mind often employs social grace as camouflage. But let us consider the facts. The detective asked for a description of Reginald Marchmorn, which Lady Eleanor supplied in careful detail. Tall, dark hair with a hint of grey at the temples, an elegant carriage, impeccable dress, and a most persuasive manner. He is known for, shall we say, a taste for fine living beyond his means. Poirot nodded slowly. Ah, a man accustomed to desire. And his hands, madam, did you notice them? Small details, yes, but hands often betray the inclination to action. Gloves, for instance, may conceal fingerprints but cannot conceal intention. Lady Eleanor looked puzzled. I do not understand, Monsieur Poirot. The hands, Poirot explained gently, their condition, the wear upon them. One can deduce habits, even vices, by observing the manner in which they are kept or disguised. Gloves, polished nails, calluses, these are the silent storytellers of character. As if on cue, Reginald Marchmorn appeared in the drawing-room, his expression carefully cultivated to charm and disarm. Poirot observed him with unerring precision, noting the glint of impatience beneath the mask of politeness, the slight tremor in the left hand as he removed his gloves. Ah, Monsieur Poirot, Marchmorn said smoothly, bowing slightly, I trust one am not intruding upon any delicate investigations. Not at all, Monsieur Marchmorn, Poirot replied, inclining his head with impeccable courtesy. But you will understand that a certain investigation is ongoing, and your presence may require us to consider all factors carefully. Marchmont's eyes flickered for a moment, a faint hesitation, almost imperceptible, yet Poirot's gaze caught it. The detective smiled inwardly. Such a small detail could reveal much about a man's intentions if interpreted correctly. Over the course of the morning, Poirot engaged Marchmorn in light conversation, observing every nuance of speech and gesture. A man's voice, he murmured to Hastings, carries inflections of truth, hesitation, and concealment. One must listen not merely to words, but to what is left unsaid. Marchmorn spoke eloquently about travel, family affairs, and investments, yet Poirot noted inconsistencies. A casual reference to the timing of his arrival contradicted Lady Eleanor's account. A story of visiting the library to admire a portrait seemed unnecessary, yet he lingered on it with unusual intensity. Poirot's little grey cells catalogued every discrepancy. By midday, Poirot requested a private audience with Lady Eleanor. He spoke in a low, deliberate tone. Madam, observe how one detail may illuminate another. The scuff marks leading from the drawing-room to the library, they suggest a path taken, yes, but by whom? A man of large size would leave heavier impressions than those observed. And yet, the perfume noted near the cabinet, it is a scent commonly associated with luxury, often favored by individuals accustomed to indulgence. Lady Eleanor's eyes widened slightly. You believe it is him? Poirot shook his head. Not yet. We must observe, analyze, and verify. The human mind is complex. Actions are not merely performed, they are motivated by desire, fear, or necessity. And all motives leave traces, subtle as the whisper of silk against a marble floor. Poirot then turned to Hastings. We must also consider the household. Fear and loyalty can produce deception as cleverly as intent. Observe Clara, the maid. Her hesitation, the slight flush on her cheeks, she knows more than she admits. Yet fear restrains her from speaking. Hastings frowned. You think she is involved? Par encore, Poirot replied softly. Perhaps inadvertently. But the truth lies in patterns, mon ami. The manner in which each person moves, reacts, and speaks is a tapestry from which the thief's identity may eventually be drawn. After lunch, Poirot requested a walk in the garden, accompanied by Marchmorn. The detective observed the visitor's behavior carefully, the way he handled the gate latch, the casual brushing against foliage, the subtle glances toward the drawing-room windows. Each gesture was catalogued. Observe, Hastings, Poirot said, how a man's body tells secrets that words conceal. The tension in his shoulders, the slight hesitation in his step, he is alert, yet wary. Perhaps he fears discovery, yet he wishes to appear unconcerned. Poirot's mind worked tirelessly, connecting the scuff marks, the perfume, the ledger scrap, and the behavior of both staff and guest. By late afternoon, he began to form a theory, though he withheld it, preferring to gather further evidence before confrontation. That evening, Poirot called the household to the drawing room, ostensibly for a discussion of evening arrangements. He observed the interactions. Marchmont engaged Lady Eleanor in conversation, yet his eyes continually darted toward the cabinet. Clara moved to serve tea, her hands trembling slightly. The butler maintained perfect composure, yet his posture betrayed vigilance. Poirot sipped his tea, eyes narrowing as he catalogued every micro-expression, every subtle tension. He then addressed the group with his characteristic elegance. "Miss Amiss," he began, "yesterday we observed the first traces. Today, we observe the second layer. The human mind is a complex mechanism, each action and reaction a gear in the machine. And soon, with patience, we shall see which of these gears has caused disruption in this harmonious household." He allowed a pause, letting the weight of his words settle. The room remained quiet, the subtle ticking of a clock the only sound. Even Marchmont seemed momentarily unsettled by Poirot's calm intensity. As night approached, Poirot retired to his room, where he reviewed his mental notes with his customary precision. The visitor, the scuff marks, the faint perfume, the hesitant gestures of staff, all elements of a puzzle that was far from simple. Yet Poirot's little grey cells worked tirelessly, connecting the dots invisible to any ordinary observer. "Ah, mon Dieu," he whispered to himself, "the dance has begun." Each participant moves carefully, masking intentions, revealing secrets in the tiniest gestures. And it is my task to discern truth from deception. Patience, observation, and psychology, these shall unveil the path to our missing necklace. The manor, silent now under the soft moonlight, seemed to wait along with Poirot, holding its secrets close, yet subtly preparing to reveal them to the detective whose genius had already begun to untangle the web of mystery. Chapter 5: Red Herrings. The morning at Ashford Manor arrived under a sky of steel-grey clouds, heavy with the threat of rain. The air was cool, carrying the scent of damp earth and freshly cut grass, which mixed with the lingering perfume that Poirot had noted near the cabinet. The detective rose promptly, performing his morning ablutions with the precision of a man who believed that order of mind begins with order of body. "Ah, Hastings," he said, brushing his neatly waxed moustache, "today, we must turn our attention to the misleading signals. Human beings, Miss Amiss, are clever in their deception, whether deliberate or unconscious. Some clues are true, others are cleverly planted to mislead. And it is the task of the detective to discern the difference." Breakfast was taken in near silence. Lady Eleanor seemed preoccupied, her fingers tracing the rim of her teacup, while Marchmont lounged with casual elegance, speaking little yet observing much. Clara moved with efficiency tempered by visible anxiety, her eyes occasionally flicking toward the cabinet as if seeking reassurance that it remained undisturbed. Poirot, however, allowed himself to notice small details, the tilt of a picture frame, the faint dust marks on the windowsill, the irregular alignment of chairs. Each was catalogued mentally, a silent story unfolding beneath his sharp gaze. After breakfast, Poirot began a systematic inspection of the house, starting with the west wing, a part rarely frequented by visitors. Hastings followed dutifully, noting the detective's deliberate, almost ceremonial, movements. Poirot examined each room with painstaking care, running his gloved hand along the edges of furniture, noting fingerprints, and observing minute variations in light and shadow. In the west wing, Poirot noticed a broken window latch, its wood splintered slightly. "Ah," he murmured, "an apparent entry point. Yet, the window is locked from within. A most curious placement of evidence. Could it become a distraction?" Hastings frowned. You think someone staged it? My's OUI, Poirot replied. Observe how human minds love to mislead. One clue may appear crucial, yet it is a clever ruse, designed to divert attention from the true path. He followed the faint traces of mud leading from the back entrance, cataloguing each footprint. The impressions were inconsistent, suggesting either an inexperienced intruder or a deliberate attempt to confuse the observer. Poirot crouched, brushing aside a leaf to inspect a partial print. Hastings, a clever mind can plant tracks, but each deception carries a signature. We must discern intention from accident. Returning to the drawing room, Poirot paused near the cabinet. The faint perfume lingered, delicate yet persistent. Observe, Hastings, how some clues are silent witnesses. A scent, easily overlooked, yet highly revealing. The hand that touched this cabinet may have left no fingerprints, but the perfume is the signature of its presence. Mon Dieu, humans are fascinating creatures. Poirot then turned his attention to the household. He summoned each member for brief interviews, observing reactions with his characteristic precision. First, the butler, Mr. Blackwood. I saw nothing unusual yesterday, monsieur, he said, bowing slightly. Yet Poirot noticed the subtle stiffening of his shoulders, the quick glance toward the cabinet, the faint twitch of his left eye. Vigilance and fear, Poirot mused silently. Next, Clara. She appeared hesitant, hands tightly clasped. I only tidied, monsieur. I did not. I did not move anything. She stammered. Poirot's little grey eyes lingered on her, cataloguing the tremor in her hands, the rapid blink, and the faint redness of her cheeks. Fear, mon ami, he whispered to Hastings. Sometimes more revealing than guilt. Even Marchmorn, with his polished charm, betrayed subtle cues. He spoke with confidence, yet his gestures occasionally betrayed impatience, a slight tapping of the fingers on the arm of his chair, a brief tightening of the jaw, a glance that lingered too long on the cabinet. Each of these small signs Poirot catalogued carefully. To complicate matters, Poirot discovered a curious occurrence in the library. A vase had been knocked slightly askew, and a small book lay open on the desk, its pages fluttering in the draught. The book appeared to be a mundane volume on English history, yet a closer examination revealed that a page had been turned hastily, almost imperceptibly, as if someone had scanned it in a hurry. Poirot noted this with interest. A distraction, he murmured. A clue planted to mislead, yet revealing a hurried presence. Hastings observed him with a frown. I don't understand, Poirot. Are these things really important? Poirot smiled gently. Hastings, each object, each disturbance, carries a meaning. The human mind leaves a trail, even when it believes it conceals it. And in this house, where many minds move in subtle fear, the truth is interwoven with deception. We must untangle the threads. Poirot then examined the cabinet once more. The lock remained untouched, yet the faint smudge near the lower shelf persisted, subtle and elusive. He crouched, inhaling delicately at the scent of perfume. The signature of present remains. No ordinary thief, Hastings. Only one accustomed to careful movements, to planning, to concealment. As the afternoon progressed, Poirot returned to the scattered ledger scrap he had discovered earlier. The faint numbers hinted at a code, possibly related to a safe or storage compartment. He questioned Lady Eleanor discreetly about any private storage areas or items of value. She hesitated, then revealed a small secret compartment in the study's desk, previously unknown even to some household members. Poirot nodded thoughtfully, storing this detail for further analysis. By evening, Poirot gathered the household for a brief meeting in the drawing room. Miss Amos, he began, his voice calm yet commanding, yesterday we observed initial traces. Today, we have encountered signals that may mislead. A broken latch, muddy tracks, a displaced vase, all these could suggest intrusion. Yet the reality, mon ami, is rarely so simple. Some clues are designed to attract attention, to divert the observer. Others are accidental, created by human error. And among them, the truth waits quietly. He allowed the words to settle, watching carefully as each household member absorbed them. Clara's hands twitched slightly, Marchmont's eyes flickered toward the cabinet, and the butler's posture remained rigid yet wary. Poirot catalogued these reactions silently, committing each to memory. Hastings leaned in, whispering, "Do you think the visitor is involved?" "Perhaps, Hastings," Poirot replied softly, "but we must not be hasty. Deception is everywhere. A man may appear guilty, yet only the trail of subtle, consistent signs can reveal the truth. The path of the necklace, like the path of the human mind, is convoluted. And patience, observation, and the little grey cells shall guide us." Night fell over Ashford Manor, heavy and still. Poirot retreated to his room, reviewing the day's observations with meticulous care. Red herrings had multiplied, the broken window, the muddy tracks, the displaced book, the tilted vase. Each was carefully considered, catalogued, and set aside for further analysis. Yet amid these distractions, the true traces persisted, the faint perfume, the scuff marks, the smudge on the cabinet, and the mysterious numbers in the ledger. Poirot's little grey cells connected the threads, separating deliberate deception from accidental evidence. "Ah, mon Dieu," he whispered, eyes gleaming, "the dance of deceit is intricate, yet every movement leaves a mark. Tomorrow, we shall pursue the second layer. And the mind that orchestrated this shall reveal itself, in spite of its cunning." The manor, silent under the watchful gaze of the moon, seemed to hold its breath, as if anticipating the detective's next move. Within, the hidden truth waited patiently, its discovery drawing ever closer under the sharp scrutiny of Hercule Poirot. Chapter 6. The subtle clues align. The morning air at Ashford Manor carried a crisp freshness, hinting at the approaching autumn. Mist clung lightly to the gardens, curling around the hedgerows and the edges of the flower beds. Poirot, always an early riser, moved with his characteristic precision, observing the play of light on the polished floors and the faint traces of last night's activity. Every detail, however minor, was catalogued in his little grey cells, for he knew that the solution to a mystery often lay in the smallest of subtleties. After breakfast, Poirot requested a private audience with Lady Eleanor in her study. The sunlight streamed through the tall windows, illuminating the intricate inlay of the furniture and casting delicate shadows on the walls. Lady Eleanor seated herself gracefully, her hands folded in her lap, her expression composed yet tinged with worry. "Monsieur Poirot," she said quietly, "I fear that the necklace may be lost forever. I have been careful, as always, yet it vanished without a trace. And the household, they seem frightened. I do not know whom to trust." Poirot inclined his head thoughtfully. "Madam, fear often clouds judgment, but the truth is not lost. It hides, but it leaves traces, subtle as the footprints of a deer in the dew. And these traces, marks, scents, gestures, are the language of the mind." He then turned to examine the cabinet again. With deliberate care, he inspected the lock, noting the almost imperceptible scratch he had observed previously. It suggested a careful handling of the mechanism, perhaps an attempt to open it without leaving clear evidence of tampering. Poirot's gloved fingers traced the contours lightly, and he noted the faint smudge on the lower shelf. "Ah, le voilà," he murmured softly to Hastings. "The criminal's hand has passed here. Not clumsily, no, but carefully, as one handles delicate glass. A hand of small size, precise, accustomed to finesse. And yet, see how the presence lingers, the perfume, subtle yet insistent, like a whisper that cannot be silenced." Hastings frowned. "Do you think it was someone from the household?" "Possibly," Poirot replied, "though not necessarily malicious. The mind may act under impulse, curiosity, or fear. The intention to steal is not always present, yet the result may appear identical. Observation, patience, and deduction shall reveal the truth. Poirot then focused on the scrap of paper from the ledger, the one with the faint, nearly invisible numbers. He held it up to the light, turning it slowly, and a pattern began to emerge. The numbers corresponded to a code, most likely a combination to a safe or secret compartment. He had previously questioned Lady Eleanor about any hidden storage, and now he returned to the study to examine the desk more closely. "Ah, très intéressant," he whispered, kneeling to inspect the small compartment in the desk. The mechanism was simple, yet designed with the utmost discretion. Poirot's fingers tested the combination he deduced from the ledger numbers, and with a soft click, the hidden drawer opened. Inside lay a small, velvet-lined box, empty. Empty, Poirot mused, carefully replacing the drawer. The object is gone, yet its removal reveals knowledge of the house, access to secrets, and careful planning. The hand that took it knows the household intimately. He called for the household to gather in the drawing room once more. Lady Eleanor, Clara, Thomas, and even Reginald Marchmorn were present. Poirot's manner remained composed, almost elegant, yet his eye scanned each face with precise scrutiny, noting the subtle micro-expressions that betrayed anxiety, hesitation, or concealment. "Miss Amos," he began, "we have discovered important details." The cabinet was handled by a hand both careful and precise. A faint perfume lingers, which betrays presence. Scuff marks lead from the drawing room to the library, suggesting movement, but not by all members. A coded number, discovered in a ledger, corresponds to a secret compartment, empty, yes, but indicative of knowledge and intent. He paused, letting his words sink in, then turned to Clara. "Young one, you tidied the drawing room last night. You passed near the cabinet. Tell me, did you notice anything unusual?" Clara's eyes widened, her hands trembling. I saw nothing, monsieur. I only dusted the shelves." "I did not. I did not touch anything." Poirot nodded gently. Fear often restrains speech, yet truth reveals itself in gestures. "Your hand brushed the lower shelf, a trace remains. Yet your fear suggests loyalty rather than intent. You are not the thief, but you are a witness to subtle actions." "Very well." He then addressed Marchmorn. "Monsieur Marchmorn, you arrived late yesterday, did you not? And you lingered near the drawing room cabinet. Tell me honestly, did you see the necklace?" Marchmont's eyes flickered, a brief hesitation betraying unease. I admired it, yes. I was fascinated, but I did not touch it. I retired to my room early, as Lady Eleanor requested." Poirot's moustache twitched. Fascination. Curiosity can be innocent or dangerous, depending on the mind and the circumstances. Yet, your hand gestures, the slight tremor in removing gloves, suggest awareness of possibilities. Hastings whispered to Poirot, "You think he might have taken it?" "Patience, Hastings," Poirot replied softly. "Observation first. The truth will emerge in the interplay of subtleties, not in accusation." Poirot then returned to the scuff marks. He followed them with his gaze, noting their path from the drawing room to the library, and finally to a small side corridor. Each mark was faint, almost imperceptible, yet consistent. Poirot's attention to detail revealed that the footprints were not uniform. One foot was slightly smaller than the other, suggesting someone with a slight limp or a careful gait designed to avoid detection. He called for Thomas, the gardener, who had claimed to remain in the stables. "Mon ami, these marks, do they correspond to your shoe size?" Thomas glanced at the marks and shook his head. "No, sir. My shoes are larger. I have not walked this path last night." Poirot smiled slightly. "Très bien. Then our path narrows. The object was moved by one small hand, accustomed to care, who knows the household intimately, and whose intentions may be hidden beneath fear or loyalty. He then turned to Lady Eleanor. Madam, sometimes the truth is concealed in plain sight. Objects are often hidden where the mind assumes they cannot be found. The cabinet, the secret drawer, the ledger code, all suggest a plan, but also a lapse. The hand that placed the necklace, or removed it, made a subtle error, detectable only to one trained in observation. By evening, Poirot had completed a thorough review of all subtle evidence, the perfume, the smudge, the scuff marks, the coded ledger, and the empty compartment. Each piece individually suggested possibilities, yet collectively, they began to form a coherent pattern. The mystery was narrowing, the suspect pool shrinking, and Poirot's little grey cells were working tirelessly to connect each detail with the mind behind the act. Finally, he sat in his chair, hands clasped, eyes narrowing as he reviewed the day's discoveries. "Ah, mon Dieu," he whispered, "the house itself conspires to reveal truth. The human mind, in fear or curiosity, leaves its trace. And the necklace, it awaits discovery, hidden not merely in physical space, but within the web of intentions and errors. Soon, Hastings, the thread shall converge, and the mind responsible shall reveal itself." Outside, the wind rustled the autumn leaves, and the shadows in Ashford Manor deepened, as if the house itself were guarding its secrets, waiting for the detective's unparalleled insight to untangle the carefully woven mystery. Chapter 7: Threads of Deception. The morning at Ashford Manor dawned misty and muted, as if the world itself were holding its breath. Inside the grand house, attention had settled like a fine dust, imperceptible to most but palpable to Poirot, whose little grey cells were ever vigilant. He rose early, performing his morning rituals with the precision and ceremony that lent his mind the clarity it required to untangle the complexities of human behaviour. Hastings appeared shortly after, still rubbing the sleep from his eyes. "I hope we have more progress today, Poirot," he said. "The household seems on edge." "Oh, Hastings," Poirot replied softly, moustache twitching. "Fear and secrecy create pressure, mon ami. And under pressure, humans reveal the truth, even when they attempt to conceal it." After a brief breakfast, Poirot called the household together in the drawing-room. Lady Eleanor, Clara, Thomas, and Reginald Marchmorn entered, each bearing a carefully constructed expression of composure. Yet Poirot's sharp gaze immediately noted the subtleties beneath, the slight tremor of Clara's hands, the almost imperceptible tightening of Marchmont's jaw, the rigid posture of the butler. Each micro-expression was a silent word in the story of the missing necklace. "Miss Amos," Poirot began, his voice calm yet imbued with authority, "we have now observed not only the traces of action but the reactions of those present. A crime of subtlety leaves behind subtle signs. And it is through these signs that the mind of the actor may be discerned." He moved slowly around the room, hands clasped behind his back, eyes flicking to each face. "Yesterday, I examined scuff marks, faint perfumes, and slight disturbances in furniture. Today, I ask each of you again to recount your actions and observations, for repetition often reveals discrepancies unnoticed in initial accounts." He first addressed Clara. "Young one, last night you moved through this room. Did you notice anything unusual, perhaps overlooked?" Clara's hands twisted nervously in her lap. I tidied the shelves, monsieur. The cabinet. I did not touch it, I promise. But I thought I saw a shadow near the window, though I may have been imagining it." Poirot inclined his head. "Are it imagination or reality? Both can reveal intent." "Very well." He turned then to Thomas, the gardener. "Mon ami, you claimed to be in the stables last night. Yet scuff marks suggest a presence along a corridor leading from the drawing-room to the library. Can you account for this discrepancy?" Thomas shifted uncomfortably. I did not see anything unusual, sir. I remained in the stables. Poirot's moustache twitched. Vigilance and fear may deceive, mon ami. Yet a careful mind will notice inconsistencies in others' accounts. Very well. Finally, he addressed Reginald Marchmorn. Monsieur Marchmorn, you arrived late last evening and lingered near the cabinet. Your account of admiration for the necklace is noted, yet small gestures betray awareness, subtle movements of the fingers, the brief tightening of the jaw, hesitation in speech. Tell me again, did you see the necklace? Marchmont's eyes flickered, a micro-expression that lasted less than a heartbeat, yet it was sufficient for Poirot. I did not touch it, he said slowly. I merely looked. That is all. Curiosity, Poirot murmured under his breath. Often innocent, yet sometimes a gateway to action. Patience, Hastings, the truth reveals itself in layers. Poirot then requested that each household member demonstrate their movements through the drawing room at the approximate time the necklace disappeared. As each retraced their steps, he observed carefully the placement of the feet, the handling of furniture, the glance toward the cabinet. Each movement, each gesture was noted in his little grey cells. It was then that he noticed a subtle pattern. Clara's hesitation at the edge of the cabinet, Marchmont's glances toward the lower shelf, and even the butler's posture suggested that each had knowledge of the cabinet's contents. Yet only one set of gestures indicated not fear or curiosity but careful planning, the deliberate avoidance of leaving obvious traces while reaching toward a hidden compartment. Poirot's eyes twitched with satisfaction. Hastings, observe, there is a rhythm, a pattern in human action. Some acts are impulsive, some hesitant. Others are precise, calculated, and disciplined. The latter is our path forward. He turned to Lady Eleanor. Madam, it is essential to understand that the truth is rarely dramatic in its discovery. It is often subtle, hidden in gestures, hesitation, and errors small enough to be overlooked. The person responsible, if indeed one is responsible, has left traces that, while minute, are consistent and revealing. Hastings frowned. But Poirot, how can we be sure? There are so many small clues, smudges, scuff marks, a faint perfume. Each could belong to anyone. Poirot smiled faintly. Hastings, that is the art of detection. Individually, each sign may mislead. Together, they form a symphony of truth. The mind leaves behind a signature. Unconscious yet unmistakable to a trained observer. He then focused on a small detail previously overlooked, a slightly askew picture frame above the fireplace. It was subtle, almost imperceptible. Yet the tilt indicated that someone had leaned against the mantel while observing the cabinet, likely while planning or testing the cabinet's lock. Très intéressant, Poirot whispered. A deliberate, yet small, error. The human mind, confident in its cleverness, leaves behind these breadcrumbs. And now, the breadcrumbs lead to the actor. Poirot requested a private examination of the library. The ledger with coded numbers, the small empty compartment, and the faint scuff marks formed a pattern in his mind. The code suggested knowledge of secret compartments, the scuff marks indicated careful movement, the faint perfume revealed the presence of someone accustomed to luxury and finesse. The combination of these subtle clues began to converge in a single, coherent theory. Returning to the drawing room, Poirot addressed the household once more. His voice was calm, yet carried the weight of inevitable revelation. Miss Amos, today we have observed not merely action, but intention. Gestures, hesitations, and errors reveal much about the mind behind them. Soon, the thread shall converge, and the actor shall be exposed, not through accusation, but through careful reasoning. He allowed the words to hang, studying each face. Clara's hands trembled slightly, her eyes downcast. Thomas shifted in his seat, uneasy, Marchmont's polished composure was beginning to falter, a faint tension lingering in his posture. Poirot leaned forward slightly. "Observe, Hastings, the human mind is a delicate mechanism. Each member of this household is capable of thought, yet only one has combined knowledge, opportunity, and precise action sufficient to account for the disappearance of the necklace. And as always, in attempting cleverness, even the most subtle actor leaves a trace." By late afternoon, Poirot had compiled his observations into a mental map, the subtle misalignments, the small traces of perfume, the scuff marks, the ledger code, and the hesitant gestures of the household members. Each detail formed a thread, and these threads, when carefully examined, began to form a picture of the mind behind the act. Finally, as evening approached, Poirot summoned the household to the drawing-room once more. He took his seat, hands clasped, moustache twitching with quiet satisfaction. The stage was set, the threads of deception revealed, and the moment for revelation approached. "Miss Amis," he said calmly, "we have traced the subtle signs, observed the patterns of behavior, and studied the consequences of action. Tomorrow, Hastings, the truth shall be unveiled. Each clue, each hesitation, each trace leads to a mind both clever and fallible. And in that convergence, the missing necklace shall be found, and the matter resolved with precision and justice." The household departed to their rooms, leaving Poirot and Hastings alone in the drawing-room. Outside, the wind rustled the autumn leaves, carrying with it the faint whisper of secrets yet to be revealed. Poirot leaned back, his eyes reflecting a quiet intensity. "Ah, mon Dieu," he murmured, "the stage is ready. The final act approaches, and the mind that orchestrated this shall reveal itself in spite of its cunning." Hastings watched him with anticipation. "Do you really think you've worked it all out?" Poirot's lips curved in a small, knowing smile. "Hastings, the little grey cells do not rest. The mind leaves traces even when the hand is careful and the heart trembles. Tomorrow, the last pieces shall fall into place." Ashford Manor, under the fading light, seemed to hold its breath, preparing for the resolution that only Hercule Poirot's unparalleled intellect could deliver. Chapter 8: The Unravelling. The morning at Ashford Manor was still and almost sacred in its quiet. A soft fog clung to the gardens, filtering the light into a pale, ethereal glow. Poirot moved through the halls with deliberate calm, his gloved hands clasped behind his back, the little grey cells within his mind working tirelessly. Today, he had decided, the mystery of the missing necklace would be brought to its conclusion. After breakfast, Poirot requested the presence of the entire household in the drawing-room. Lady Eleanor, Clara, Thomas, and Reginald Marchmont entered, each carrying an expression of polite curiosity tinged with unease. Poirot's calm yet penetrating gaze swept over them, cataloguing each subtle shift in posture, each flicker of the eyes, each hesitation. "Miss Amis," he began, his voice smooth yet authoritative, "we are gathered today not to cast suspicion without reason, but to reveal truth. The disappearance of the necklace is a puzzle, intricate yet solvable through careful observation, deduction, and the examination of subtle clues left behind, both deliberate and accidental." He paused, allowing his words to settle, and then gestured toward the cabinet. This cabinet, apparently ordinary, was the focal point of our inquiry. Yet it revealed much. The lock shows no sign of force, indicating that the object was removed either by someone possessing knowledge or by concealment within. A small smudge on the lower shelf, combined with a faint perfume, pointed to the presence of a hand careful, refined, and accustomed to subtle gestures. Poirot then moved to the scuff marks leading from the drawing-room to the library. These marks, though faint, reveal movement at the time the necklace disappeared. The path shows care, hesitation, calculation, and familiarity with the household. The scuff is slight, almost imperceptible, yet it was enough to indicate the presence of one who knew the corridors intimately. Clara shifted slightly in her seat. Poirot's eyes, sharp as ever, caught the movement. "Ah, the witness," fearful yet truthful. Young one, your actions yesterday, your hesitation near the cabinet, and your observations have been invaluable. Fear restrained you, yet you observed carefully. You are not the culprit, but a guide to the mind of one who is. He then turned to Marchmorn. The visitor's eyes betrayed a flicker of unease, a subtle tension in the shoulders. Poirot continued, Monsieur Marchmorn, you arrived late yesterday evening and lingered near the cabinet. Your admiration for the necklace, while perhaps sincere, also revealed calculation. The gestures of your fingers, the slight tightening of the jaw, and your attention to the lower shelf, these are not signs of mere curiosity. Yet, there is more to consider. Poirot's little grey cells worked rapidly, cataloguing the seemingly minor details, the empty secret drawer, the coded numbers in the ledger, the subtle perfume, the scuff marks, and the hesitant gestures of each household member. Then, with the precision for which he was famed, he began to weave the threads together. The ledger scrap, he said, contained numbers corresponding to a secret compartment in the study. This compartment is empty, yet it is evidence of planning and knowledge. The hand that opened it did so carefully, to avoid obvious traces. Yet, in their cleverness, a small but crucial detail was overlooked. The sequence of the code had been reversed in haste, leaving a trace only discernible to a trained mind. He paused, eye sweeping the room. The perfume, subtle and exquisite, indicates the presence of someone accustomed to refinement. Yes, Monsieur Marchmorn, the fragrance you favour. Yet that alone is insufficient. The decisive factor lies in the combination of subtle movements, knowledge of the house, and opportunity. Poirot moved to the cabinet, crouching slightly. Observe the lower shelf, and the faint smudge. It is small, precise, indicative of a hand both delicate and accustomed to finesse. And here, the tilt of the picture above the mantel. It suggests someone leaned to observe the cabinet, seeking the combination. The subtle imperfection betrays careful calculation, yet human error is never absent. All eyes were fixed on him, tense and attentive. Poirot's moustache twitched, and he allowed a slight, knowing smile to curve his lips. Miss Amos, the truth is as simple as it is hidden. The necklace did not vanish by accident, nor was it removed haphazardly. It was taken with knowledge, careful planning, and intention. And yet the traces, overlooked by the clever mind, reveal the identity of the actor. He stood slowly, turning to face Marchmorn fully. Monsieur Marchmorn, the missing necklace was placed in your room last night. Your knowledge of luxury, your fascination with finery, and your familiarity with careful movement all pointed to you. The scuff marks, your gestures, the perfume, all are consistent with your presence. And yet, a crucial error betrayed your intention. In arranging the cabinet's lock and the secret compartment, you left subtle signs detectable to observation. Marchmont's face flushed crimson, his composure cracking. I admit, yes, he stammered. I was tempted. I thought I could simply admire it, then replace it without anyone noticing. I did not intend harm. I only wished to hold it briefly. Poirot nodded with calm gravity. A desire, monsieur, can be a powerful motivator. Yet in your cleverness, you underestimated observation, reasoning, and the power of human attention to detail. The necklace is recovered, not lost, but placed aside, ready to be returned. And no lasting harm has occurred, save for a lesson in caution and truth. He then turned to Lady Eleanor. Madam, your household remains intact. The necklace is safe. And the truth, though initially obscured, has been revealed through careful observation, the study of human action, and the understanding that subtlety leaves a trail. Clara, sitting quietly, breathed a small sigh of relief. Thomas, the gardener, relaxed, understanding that innocence had prevailed. Marchmorn, chastened, nodded silently, the weight of his error evident in his posture. Poirot continued, his voice composed but imbued with satisfaction. You see, Miss Amos, even the cleverest deception cannot withstand careful analysis. The little grey cells notice what the eyes may overlook: hesitation, gesture, error, and the subtlest of traces. Every human mind, in attempting to conceal, also reveals, if one observes patiently and with precision. He walked slowly around the room, hands clasped, glancing at each face with his characteristic elegance. The mystery, intricate yet resolvable, is now complete. The missing necklace, the subtle clues, the human intentions, all have been accounted for. And order, justice, and clarity are restored to Ashford Manor. Lady Eleanor rose, her eyes bright with gratitude. Monsieur Poirot, your skill is extraordinary. I cannot thank you enough. You have not only solved the mystery, but restored peace to my household. Poirot inclined his head gracefully. Madam, the truth is not extraordinary, it is simply there, waiting to be observed. Observation, reasoning, and a calm mind reveal what is hidden. And in this, we find satisfaction. Ernest par Hastings. Hastings, seated nearby, smiled broadly. Indeed, Poirot. I still marvel at the way you notice everything, even the tiniest details. It's like the house itself was speaking to you. Poirot's lips curved in a small, knowing smile. Ah, exactly, Hastings. Every object, every gesture, every subtle trace is a word in the language of human action. And when read carefully, it tells the truth more clearly than any confession could. The necklace, now safe, is merely the tangible conclusion. The real discovery, always, is of the mind behind the act. With that, Poirot allowed a moment of quiet reflection. Ashford Manor, bathed now in the warm glow of afternoon light breaking through the mist, seemed at peace once more. The tension that had pervaded its halls lifted, leaving behind order, clarity, and the satisfaction that only truth, revealed through observation and intellect, can bring. And as the household moved on, resuming their lives with a newfound sense of relief, Poirot and Hastings quietly departed to the library for tea, the detective's little grey cells already cataloguing the day's final observations, ready for the next mystery, and the next subtle trail of human behaviour to be unravelled. Ashford Manor had kept its secrets, but not from Hercule Poirot. And in his brilliant mind, order had been restored, the threads of deception untangled, and justice, gentle, precise, and satisfying, had been served.